Welcome to Rooted. I'm your host, Ruth Roach, and this is where we get real with the people who make our industry what it is today. My guest today is Corey Gray from Artistry, Your Day Off podcast. And he's going to share a story of how he got into the industry, how he's into building community, and how he built his podcast to what it is now, which is a wildly successful podcast. He also creates with his podcast a really safe place, a space for people to have conversations about meaningful things like addiction, mental health, and social media's impact on our industry. So let's get into it right now. Okay, Corey, here we are. I'm so excited that you could do this today. Thank you so much for being here.
Honestly, man, thanks for having me. I know we've been trying to get together and do this for a little bit, but I'm honored to be in your presence there, Miss Ruth.
Oh, honored. I'm honored. I'm nervous because you are the originator of Artistry podcast, and I'm sitting here going, is my mic on? Can you hear me?
You know, here's what you learn during podcasts is that there's something always going crazy anyways, right? Like if it's a mic
Yeah.
or if it's bad internet connection or, if my computer always wants to reboot in front of a podcast. So there's nothing, knock on wood, there's nothing that's going to happen today that we haven't already been through or that we haven't already tortured our guest with.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for this. And I love your studio. It's cool. I see hats and Presley and a cool light with your logo. And I'm just, I like my white wall. It's more like a blank, just kidding.
No, we just fill it up. You know what's cool is like I kept getting all these caps, from like different
Yeah.
brands and stuff, and I was like, I'm just gonna put them on the wall. I'm just gonna. So that's what they are. I mean, most of them, almost all of them are some hair related one way or the other, except for that guy, which is Mad Rabbit, which is a great tattoo cream right there.
Oh,
Those
cool.
guys, yeah, it's a great tattoo cream. If you have tattoos, I recommend it. It just makes your tattoos feel and look delicious.
Tattoo cream.
Yeah, it's like a almost like a honestly, hairdresser talk, it feels like a pomade. It feels like a pomade that you put over your tattoos, and then it like makes
Yeah.
the tattoos super bright and super clean. It almost it gives the appearance of like when you first get a new fresh tattoo. After time they just kind of like they fade under the skin
Yeah.
a little bit, so it kind of pops them back up there. Not that this
Well,
is a Mad
wow.
Rabbit commercial, but
I know.
go check it out.
That's good for Mad Rabbit. All right, cool. So, I want to talk about like because you've done so many cool things, and I think your story is really unique in our industry. And I just want you to tell our listeners all about that. So let's start with what drew you into the world of hair. How did you get into this, and how did that shape where you are today? In your own words.
Um, I mean, the short story and the long story. I guess it's a long story, but my dad was a hairstylist.
Hmm.
My dad, but he didn't like work in a hair salon or anything. What he did is he worked in nursing homes. So he worked in like 5 different nursing homes. So every day he was like in a different nursing home. I think it might have been the same like umbrella company, but he was in like 5 different buildings during the years, and he used to famously say that he could do like a roller set in like 3 minutes or something.
Hmm.
Something absolutely crazy, which I'm sure he could because they probably had no hair. Let's be honest.
Right.
They probably had
Three
no hair.
rollers and you're done.
Right. But I never like worked with him. Like I never worked in the salon. I'm sure I wasn't even welcome being that that they were nursing homes and stuff. However, where I wasn't scared either, like my dad did it. So, I'm not scared of the industry in that sense, and then when I was in high school, I was like, I think I want to do hairdressing. And then a friend of mine was like, you suck with your hand. You can't be a hairdresser. And like, when you're 17, you believe that shit.
Right.
So I believed them, and then what I did instead
Oh.
actually is it's okay. It all worked out, Ruth. It all worked
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
What I did instead is I went in the military, and I was in the military for 4 years. And then literally I started hair school the day after I got out of the military. So I got out of the military on October 25th, 1991. And I started hair school on October 26th, 1991. You probably don't remember the day you started hair school. I remember. I remember the day I started hair school.
I love it.
And I went to the Great Graham Webb Academy in Arlington, Virginia. So, for those of you that remember Graham Webb and
Yes,
yeah,
totally.
yeah,
How
Graham's a
cool.
good dude too, man. And there's Graham Webb when they were in the DC market, they were definitely the elite school, in the area.
Yeah.
Now we have quite a few. I know that there's a couple of Veda institutes. Our favorite certainly is the Risers with the Paul Mitchell Temple schools, and
Yeah.
I would honestly I would put up the Risers Paul Mitchell school up against any school in the country in the
Yeah.
sense of just like how they're educating, how the successes that those students are having, post school. I'm sure their numbers are the same or maybe a little bit better as far as dropout rate. I don't think that really has a lot to do with the
Right.
schools, but it probably has much more to do with the environment in which the industry is in.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so I went to Graham Webb, and then I started working for I worked for a couple salons, but then I finally landed as what I would call home base or my foundation. I worked at a hair salon called PR Partners, which was owned by the great Reg Laws. Reg Laws ended up being a great mentor for me. And the thing about mentorship or mentoring, sometimes you don't know that you're being mentored. In the moment, it only
Until
takes
later. Yeah.
you kind of have to look backwards to see that you were mentored. On that journey, coincidentally one of our dear friends, both of us, is Jackie Davis. Really took me under her wing and showed me how to show up as a professional. And
Jackie.
I love Jackie. Jackie is a great friend, and definitely somebody that I've admired my entire career. And I literally, Ruth, every moment that I get to spend with Jackie, or if I can crowbar some time with Jackie, I do it.
Yeah.
Just because she's just such a great energy and just an extraordinary hairdresser. Not just behind the chair, but she's Jackie worked with. She did all the hair for like Project Runway. Her and
Yes.
Lynn. And she's done some really cool stuff. She does NY Fashion Week every year, and I think Ruth, she was just in Paris actually. I think she did.
I think she was too. I think I saw
Yeah,
that.
she,
Yeah,
she
for Fashion Week.
and she's extraordinary, and we'll definitely get to see her at Presley Poe and Friends, which I'm excited about. I'm excited to see you guys together too, but that's
Yeah.
another story for another time. Interesting. I didn't realize how great of a salon or a foundation that I was in. Are you ready for this, Ruth? Until I started watching Tabitha's Takeover.
Uh-huh.
Right, so I was watching Tabitha's Takeover, and like we all know how it starts. It starts with like Tabitha, like attacking people essentially. At
Yeah.
the beginning of the episode, and then at the end of the episode, you love her and all that stuff. But all the advice that she was giving as far as like how to be successful behind the chair or how to be a successful salon, that was my foundation. But I didn't know how novel or unique that was, honestly, until I started watching the show.
Yeah.
It was really interesting. I go, well, like to me, that was just the way that you were supposed to conduct yourself. I didn't realize that you needed to be coached into. Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. Yes. I I tell, like you were talking about the temple, the school. I go to a lot of Paul Mitchell schools around the country, and I say to them, this is a pretty cool situation you have here. And only people that have been in other schools before that, have that, where they bring in guest artists and they get all the well-rounded, education about being a cool human and all the other things. And yeah, it's just interesting how,
I
uh,
don't know about the other schools, but I've seen some videos, but as far
yeah,
as the whole Paul Mitchell kind of network of schools goes there, but like the kids celebrate each other all the
yes.
time, and they celebrate who the guest artists are. They just seem to always be in celebration. And I mean, maybe that goes as far up as Win. I don't know if that's because Win
I think
celebrates
it
people.
does.
You
Yeah. I
know,
mean, it starts at the top, right?
it's
And
such a cool experience, and just like I wish in life we took the moment to celebrate each other a little bit more, and it's part of their foundation, and it's what they're doing. And it's a really cool experience. They when guest artists come in, they clap them in, and like with enthusiasm, and you don't even get the feeling that they have to do it. You kind of get the feeling that that I'm sure they're encouraged to do it. Yeah, I'm positive of that. But they clap in the guest artists, and then like when people like in Maryland at least, like when people hit their 1,500 hours, like they clap them out, which I think is like so cool. Like again, I wish we just spent a couple more seconds a day celebrating each other.
yeah,
I
let's
don't know if
do
that
it.
got to my story or not, but we're just chatting at this point, Ruth.
We were chatting, and you know what? We go where we go. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
But great job, Wayne. Great job, Risers. Again, that's been my only experience. But I've seen some videos of other parliamentary schools that clap people out. You know, certainly when they reach
Oh,
certain
yeah.
areas and stuff.
I've been
Pretty cool.
clapped in and clapped out, and I love it. I even had myself clapped in once.
That's awesome. Yeah, isn't it cool though? Like I've been clapped in a couple times too, and like you can't help but feel amazing about it.
I know.
You know, I mean, what a setup for like that. You just feel like it almost changes positions, right? Like you're no longer that person on the stage. Now you're just part of the group, and that you're just
Yeah,
sharing with the group. I don't know. It's a weird kind of feeling, and but appreciate it, big time appreciate it.
totally. It sets a tone that's like super positive and welcoming.
And you
And
feel like they're engaged, right? And the worst thing to do when you're the only person facing their direction, the worst thing that can happen is like for people not to be engaged. You know, so it
I
feels very
know.
engaging.
Yeah, it is. It is. And that's why you can always introduce yourself if there's nobody there to clap you in.
Yeah.
I left the classroom, went to the back of the room, said, "Okay, everybody stand up. I'm gonna introduce myself, and then I want you to cheer and scream as loud as you can. Start clapping." Because it was a different school, and they didn't clap me in because of the schedule and all this.
Yeah.
So I just went up. They introduced me. I went up there, and I went, "Hang on." I went to the back of the
Oh,
room.
that's amazing.
And I'm like, "Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's
Ruth, Ruth. That's awesome.
And I was laughing so hard, but it just totally broke the ice, and it was ridiculous. But I digress. So back
Right.
to your story.
Ruth.
Yeah.
So fast forward 30 years almost, I guess. Just had this idea to start the podcast. You know, I was a very early adopter to podcasts. I started listening to podcasts 2009-ish, 2010-ish or so. And then like I wanted to you have to understand that I wanted to start a podcast for the industry. However, the only way that we were teaching hair at that point was by angles and by color and stuff, and I couldn't quite figure out like to be. And I mean, it's a video format now, but when it was an audio format, like how do we continue having these conversations? Like you can have those conversations once, but can you sustain on those conversations? And I just couldn't figure it out. You know, I couldn't figure it out at all, honestly. And what had happened was, I mean, we've talked about it on the podcast a lot now, but the great Philip Wolf actually started his career, not fully started, but whatever, for the lack of whatever else. It's his story. But anyways, we worked together for a few years before he went to LA and became like the Philip Wolf.
Yeah.
He texted me on a Friday evening once and he goes, "Hey, I'm going to be in town on Monday. I'd love to see you." He was doing a collaboration event with a lot of like Instagram type people in the DC market, and then I uh I went to see him, and then literally Ruth, while I'm there, people are handing me their phones all day, like to take pictures. I was like Philip's like photographer for the day, and kind of when I left that afternoon, I go, now I know what it is.
Mhm.
I know what people want, and they want to just kind of know the artist behind. They want to know the person behind the artist or the person behind the whatever the
Yeah.
influencer or whatever. And that was kind of that was literally the inspiration for the podcast. So we
That's
just
so cool. In a moment.
doesn't everything great happen in the moment though?
Yeah. When you're
Or in the
not trying
shower.
to think of it.
I'm the smartest person in the world when I'm in the shower. The rest of the day I'm
Oh
just like
God.
dull. But in the shower I'm super smart. Probably because I'm alone. So uh, so
I'm amazing.
I'm amazing. Kind of alone in a car, same kind of deal. But
Right.
yeah, so then I went to my friend Tony and I go, "Hey Tony, I've got this idea to start a podcast." I pitched it to him as like I want it to be the Jimmy Fallon of the industry, and
Yes.
he said, yeah, that's all great, but if we don't bring purpose or heart to the conversation, then why are we doing it? And he was absolutely
Right.
right. I mean, literally the podcast I saw in my head, and the podcast that we ended up doing was changed in that moment. You're absolutely right.
Mhm.
It has to be about heart. It has to be about elevating, not elevating inside of as far as attention, but elevating as far as like get to know these artists, and that
Yeah.
was it. We just started booking people, and it was all heart fed, and heart led, with that, and that's honestly, I mean, it was cool, and it was also very cool, um, about being one of the first people in the space.
Yeah.
When we were doing research, the only two podcasts that I was aware of, I'm sure there were others, but the two that I was aware of that was in the hair space was Gordon Miller's podcast that he was doing for Hairbrained at the time,
Yeah.
And Eric, his name is skipping me, from Salon Republic,
Yeah.
Eric Taylor, that
Yeah.
Eric was doing that. And those were the only two podcasts that I was aware of. And I knew that we would niche down because, Gordon's podcast was very much about the brands and the brand relationships that Hairbrain had. And
Yeah.
Eric's was about, filling suites, and he was talking to people about filling suites. So and neither one of them are hairstylists either, and that's no shade
Right.
at all. But
Right. No.
I knew that being a hairstylist, you know, I still work behind the chair 4 days a week, but being a hairstylist, like that was a different conversation. That was a
Yeah.
different conversation that we could have with people. And that's kind of where it was born. And again, it's always been heart fed and for the hairstylist and even the people that we bring on today. That's always the goal. Oh, look, your dog's happy to see me.
I guess I should have shut the door.
Yeah, no worries. Who cares? It's a
Stand by.
podcast. It's what it's supposed to
I
be.
know. She always has to have attention.
See, she's also the smartest person in the shower.
She is.
Yeah, so that's how we that's kind of how we started the podcast, or at least dove into it. And the industry was incredibly responsive to us. It was pretty extraordinary. It was pretty extraordinary when we got started. Funny thing was, Ruth,
Yes,
is
I
that
remember nobody was doing anything like that. And it was
nobody
like,
was. Early, I
yeah,
mean, this was 2018. To me, that's not that long ago. But
no,
even 2018, I would ask people to come on, and almost nobody knew what a podcast was, which is like, absurd to me because at that point I had been in it, almost 10 years listening to
yeah,
podcasts. So it was it
yeah,
was, it was strange that, well, a podcast is kind of like a radio show, but it lives on the internet. It lives forever. It was the whole pitch, and then
yeah,
and I don't know how, but uh, everybody pretty much said yes.
yeah,
So it was pretty cool.
yeah.
Very, very cool.
Oh, I'm
It was
so
cool.
so happy for you. Like what it is, what it was, what it's changed into along the way. It's cool that we have someone like you who saw that and wanted to create that for us as an industry. Really cool.
Well, I received
So
that. It's also, as a personal story too. Like, I completely reinvented who I was in the industry at 50. Like,
that's cool.
it's pretty cool, right?
Yeah,
That wasn't the intention necessarily, but I
yeah,
just saw like this could be a cool thing, and I never ever saw it growing like it grew. I never ever saw us having even the guests that I mean, even having Ruth Roche on, like I just never saw that. I never
yeah.
saw that would be it. And it's actually very funny. I kind of wish Tony was here to kind of chat about it, but like at the beginning of the podcast, we like made like, what's your all time dream list? Like what would be the ultimate guest to grab there? And I think we got to 19 of the 20, which is extraordinary.
It
And
is.
like they were like Ruth, I can't tell you, they were like reaches. It was like that person would never want to talk to us. You know what I mean? And I mean, honestly, the number one person on that list is your mentor, and that was Trevor Sorby. You know,
Hmm.
and we talked to Trevor, I want to say within the first 6 months of starting the podcast. He's another one that
Yeah,
never knew what a podcast was. Like
yeah.
had no
No,
idea.
I
But
know.
when we talked to him, and like for us, I started doing, we went over it, but I started doing hair in the early 90s. And Trevor to us was our Vidal Sassoon, right? So, like,
Yes.
Trevor was like, he was about a half a generation younger than Vidal. So,
Yep.
like, he was the one that spoke to us. Like, Vidal was a little bit like older than us. Like, he wasn't like the guy we were looking to. We were looking to Trevor. So, like, fortunately, I got to see Trevor work, and I took a class with Trevor once. So, he was the ultimate hairdresser in the industry for us, for our generation. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
Yep.
so when we got to like talk to Trevor on the podcast, it was definitely an oh shit moment,
Uh-huh.
but it also kind of made things like it kind of made things easier too, because it almost like once you've talked to Trevor, nobody else is intimidating to talk to.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
Like
it
we
was
had
in
Trevor.
person, right? Your podcast?
It what?
Was in
No, we
person?
did it. No, no, he was in the UK at the time,
Oh, okay.
and then we did it. It may have been our first international podcast. Now that I think about it,
Yeah.
it may have been our first one. What was cool about that podcast too is that the Vivian listened to the whole thing live, and
Yeah.
it didn't say a word. I don't know, Vivian didn't say a word about it, but what she did do is we introduced her later at the end of the show. Say, hey, Trevor, we have a special guest for you. Vivian's here, and what was really cool is that we were witness to them having a heart to heart, which was really cool. And Trevor says, I'm gonna start crying. Hold on. Whew. Trevor says, by the way, rest in peace, Trevor. Like a whole other thing. However, Trevor was like, "Oh my gosh, Vivian, I've been meaning to tell you that I apologize for sending you to the U.S." And it was like this really like emotional thing, like he knew that she didn't want to go, or
Whoa.
there was some story like that, like she didn't want to go, but he knew that it was right for her to go, and I mean, she definitely responded with like, "No, it was the right move to do," like whether I felt
If
it or not,
you hadn't done that, I wouldn't be here.
which is crazy, right?
I know. It is crazy.
So
It's
it's
crazy.
how our worlds keep circling. You know
Yeah.
what's also, and I'm sure you feel this too, Ruth, is like I thought the hair industry was huge, but then once you start playing in the hair industry, it's not. It's the same people, the same faces. Those. It's actually interesting too. Like whether I go to Premiere Orlando or whether I go to ABS Chicago, which geographically are pretty far apart, it seems to always be the same faces of the people that are in attendance.
Yeah.
And I actually commend them and I applaud them because I think that that's the percentage of the industry that's trying to get better at this thing. I
Hmm.
know the majority, back to 80/20 law, I know that, 80% of the industry, they're not attending these shows and they're not doing that kind of stuff. Now, again, not to throw shade at them at all,
No.
but it seems like there's a 20% of the industry that's really dedicated to the industry and to learn. Not that the other 80 aren't, they're just learning in different ways.
What it makes me think of is just how, like this podcast, for example, is about your roots. Like, where did you come from? And that's why that's why we want to hear your story and all that. And then as we're talking about your roots, here comes my roots. You know what I mean? Like it's just interesting. And you said how small it is. It's like it is. It is small because and then what's happening now is the people they gave roots to are giving roots to others, and so on.
Yeah,
And like you talked about Jackie. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, no, that's exactly where I was going. Like again, I would honestly say that she's my number one mentor as far as inspiration goes, and as far as like just how to carry yourself in the industry. And we've been friends for a long, long time. Jackie and I have at this point. Again, she started at PR Partners, or she was at PR Partners when I was there, and she's still at PR Partners. All these years later. But yeah, how like your her root system, right, and she's
Hmm.
my root system.
Yeah.
It's just it is wild how that all happened, and I didn't even know that until I knew Ruth Roche. It wasn't
Yeah.
Jackie wasn't like, oh, I don't know where I'm even going with that, but like I had met you before I knew that there was even a connection to my roots,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
is also kind of crazy too.
I know.
One of the I think one of the proudest things, and I don't necessarily know if it was novel to us or if it was unique to us, but I think the industry was ready. Is I never until in our first year, 2018, we did October. We called it Sober October, and that
I
month had
remember that.
that month had 5 Mondays,
Yeah.
and so we had 5 guests on that for that month that talked about their struggles with drugs and alcohol.
Hmm.
And again, I had never heard the industry kind of talk in that way. It certainly was always in the back room. We always knew who had a drinking problem or who was using too much drugs, but it actually wasn't about the recovery. It was about their use and their
Yeah.
abuse of it more than it was about the recovery of it. So I'm really proud that we were kind of the first to start having those conversations. Again, I think the industry was ready. We very early on we talked about that. We very really early talked about mental health and mental health behind the chair and stuff. And now where like everybody's kind of talking about it.
Yeah.
I'm just really proud that we were kind of the first ones to open that conversation. And I don't know if
Yeah.
we were the first one. And again, I think the industry was just ready to hear those stories. I think what had happened, and you were part of this, so maybe you can give me some clarity on this, is that, prior to like social media, prior to like Instagram, the entire narrative of the industry was dictated by the brands. Well, let me tell you, the brands are not interested in talking about drug abuse and sobriety and all that stuff at all. Not from a brand
No.
perspective. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
until we started talking hairdresser to hairdresser, that's the only space that's available for us to talk about it.
Yeah.
And that definitely is I think social media is responsible for that, because it wasn't until social media did we even talk to each other, hairdresser to hairdresser, on a global or on a national format,
Yeah.
and again, because my entire career honestly was always dictated by the narratives of the brands. We would go to a Wella class, and it was always Sonia and Chris Dove that were representing Wella, that was always
Yeah.
representing Wella there. Redkin, it was always you guys or Sam that was always
Yeah.
representing the brand. I also think that there's much more space now. I think social media opened up space for people, because you go to like a Wella event and it's the Doves, and you're like, well, how do I become a Dove? Well, until the Doves leave, there's not a space for you to do that. You know what I
Right.
mean? But what happened with social media is it opened that up, and now, like, oh, there's all these other opportunities or availabilities to be the Doves. I hope
Yes.
I hope I hope Sony's not taken as like I'm not. I adore them. So it's not straight at all.
I
It's
want to
just
be Sonia.
everybody wants to be Sonya. And man, if you follow her on Instagram, you're like, I want that lifestyle too. Like she is living a nomadic wanderlust life, right?
Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's also been my experience too that and I often kid that I crowbarred my way to the top of the industry, at least to have conversations with Ruth Roches of the world. I kind of crowbarred my way here. I didn't have to go through the whole education thing, which was the path early, right? Like when I was coming
Yeah.
up, the path was like you go work for a brand, you do PK classes for until you want to pop your eyeballs out, and
Until
then
you're 800. No, I'm just kidding.
until you're 800, and then you kind of like work your way up in that sense. And that
Yeah.
wasn't interesting to me at all. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
I worked for Wella and for Redken for a little bit, and it took me in that sense, right? Like going through the
Yeah.
trainings and stuff, and I'm like, this is not what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I'm way too narcissistic to do this. So it wasn't until we kind of created our own space, and like the industry as a whole was very responsive to it, that we were able to kind of crowbar our way to the top. But all that being said, I am like amazed, I think is the best way to phrase it. Like just how kind and nice people have been.
Yeah.
It's not the people that quote unquote are on the top of the industry where they're all collaborators, right? Like they
Yeah.
want to collaborate for the industry. And I would argue that the reason that they're on the top of the industry is because they're collaborators. But then
Hmm.
there's this other level of people that are scratching and clawing to get attention. And sometimes all the bad stuff in the industry, the cattiness, the stab in the back and stuff, that's usually happening on that level.
Yes.
But everybody that's at the top
Absolutely.
and that are doing it, they're just collaborators, and I think those are the people that want the industry to be better, and
Yeah.
to leave legacy in the industry, and that's why there's not a lot of that stuff going on. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's just my dumb observation.
No, it totally makes sense. Totally. Has there ever been a time when you just wanted to quit doing this
Hair or a podcast?
podcast
Never.
or hair or whatever?
Never. Mm-mm. No, I mean early on in
Really?
my hairdressing career, it's tough to be a young hairdresser, and not to play the old man card too, but I think it was a little tougher, even it was a little tougher us coming up, because the only way to kind of it was our whole business was word of mouth.
Yeah.
Now there's so many more options other than word of mouth out there. That it was just tough. There was a lot of lean years there. I mean, my first year being a hairdresser, I think I made $7,500. Like that was my annual income. And on top of that, again, not to play the world's smallest violin, I was also commuting for 4 hours a day. So it was
Yeah.
it, it was crazy. So I'm commuting 4 hours a day for seventy five hundred
That
dollars.
is insane.
It's crazy, right? And I think that was like,
Yes.
I want to say that was 90. I think it was 93.
Yeah.
When I did that. So, it was wild. So were there times I wanted to quit? Yeah, there were lots of times I wanted to quit, but at the same time, at the same time, I had nothing else to do. I had no other skill. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I didn't feel like I had the option. And at that point, I had a baby girl too. So like I had to make it work, kind of thing. Like
How
not making it work wasn't an option. You know,
how old are your kids now?
she's
You
32,
just
and
have
not.
the one.
Yeah, I just have the one. She's 32, and I have two grandchildren, which are like they
That
just light
is
up my
so
life.
no. How's that possible?
I know. I don't know. I keep saying that too. I told my daughter I get in trouble, but I told my daughter I go, man, I should have had grandkids first. She's not amused by it.
That's I've never heard that. That's a good one. I
Yeah,
love it.
that's an original thought, I guess. I don't know.
It's a good one.
But I get in
Yeah.
trouble. I get, obviously I get in trouble with my daughter.
We talked a little bit about what you're most proud of, and you've spoken about some of that there, um, and your contributions being what they are. Is there anyone right now that you're mentoring or that you're, bringing into the fold that you know of? Because sometimes you're doing that with people and you don't even know, right? That
Mhm.
you're their mentor.
I mean, certainly inactively, I'd like to think that the podcast is mentoring a bunch of people. I mean, certainly people reach out to me all the time and like, oh, like I went to a new salon because of the podcast. I started a salon because of the podcast. I went into a suite because of the podcast. Like, there's certainly that kind of stuff. Which again, you can't put a number on that.
No.
Not everybody reaches out, and nor do I want everybody to reach out because, to be honest, Ruth, like I love those conversations. Let me be clear, but it's impossible to hear that in your ego not fire up. And at this point in
Right.
my life, I'm really trying to be in ego control.
Yeah.
And like, when is that thing poking up or not? So, yes, I appreciate it when I hear it, but I don't have to hear it either because I don't even. It was never intended to be about me. It was never intended to be
Yeah.
about that. It was always intended to be about you.
Yeah.
Or how can we better your life? So inactively mentorship, I like to think that just happens, just from listening in. Actively, it's interesting because at this point in my career, I don't hold back when it
Yeah.
comes to, like, having real conversations with people. There's definitely people. I mean, I like to think that I'm well, like my partner at Hairdustry, Miss Katie May. Like, I like to think that I'm a mentor to her, but the truth is she's a mentor to me too.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing about partnerships, and that's the best thing about partnerships, or what you should look for in a partnership, is that you are mentoring each other.
Yeah.
She allows me to be better in certain things, and I'm hopeful that her relationship with me allows her to be better as well. Not just in support, but just in we can have some pretty strong conversations.
Sure.
And but it needs to be that way. But here's the best part: is I never feel like she's coming at me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Or
That's
or
awesome.
and I hope that she kind of feels the same way. But that's honestly, to be all weird again, is that's kind of my life goal too. Like, I always want you, if I work with you or we work together, I always want you to be able to come to me and let's have a conversation because I promise you I'll do the best that I can to remove my ego.
Yeah.
And I have this philosophy about that I no longer react, I only respond.
Yeah.
So that to that, so we can have conversations.
That's so cool.
I don't
I
know
was
if
just
that
talking to, sorry, go ahead.
No, I said I don't know if that answered your mentor question, but yeah, I mean, I
No,
like
it
to think
does.
I like to think that there's many that we're mentoring, and then there's some other people, certainly younger people that are in my life, like through the salon world, that reach out all the time about, hey, how do I handle this, or hey, how do I not handle this, and I like to think that I handle them with soft gloves, but sometimes it's just the truth,
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to have real conversations with people. And my experience of 30 years being in the industry certainly will be, you might get you a lot different answers than you think the answer is in your head, and sometimes that hurts feelings, but again, that's never my intention. But I kind of don't want to have conversations if they can't be real.
I agree 100%. 100%. I was just talking to someone about that last night. Like, I'd rather someone tell me, no, that's a dumb idea,
Mhm.
or, and not necessarily in those words,
Right.
than to watch me do it and know that it's not going to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I appreciate that a lot.
That's it. But I also, that has to be a trusted source, right? Again,
Right.
because
Yes.
sometimes there's so much ego caught up in it that they might be speaking through their own ego, and that's not advice. That's just protecting themselves on some level. So
Yeah.
if it's definitely somebody that's disconnected and that wants to see you do well and wants to see you do well in an honest effort, then you can take that advice and be like, that's not going to work. But I would just, and that's why it's only for me in that situation, it's only far and few between who I really take their opinions honestly. But
Yeah.
also moving forward, like, Katie and I do this all the time, and again, she's been such a great learn for me because Katie is what makes her remarkable is she always has ideas. She never lacks ideas. And I've even if I disagree with the idea, or if I think that it, sometimes I just want it to play out as well, because I want to make sure that I'm not poo-pooing her idea before she can even like fully form it. And her being a friend, sometimes she comes with an unformed opinion or an unformed idea, and
Yeah.
she's just bouncing it off me. So I also need to know my role there too, and I'm trying to be better, because I am quick to play dad in the room, and I'm quick to be like, well, have you thought of, but I kind of want to give that space for her to marinate a little bit, because
Yeah.
maybe there's something I'm not seeing, right? So maybe that marination is something that I'm not seeing, and that there is like some kind of answer at the end of the whatever. But that's the gift, kind of like Katie's given me, because she always comes with ideas, and I've got
Yeah.
to, and the gift is that I've got to take that beat and let that marinate and not come in with an opinion.
Yeah. So, hey, we need to talk about your big event
We
coming up.
do. Okay, so this is okay. Talk about proud moments. This is definitely a proud moment.
Let's do it. Do it.
Let's do it. Is in two. So again, I don't know how these things happen, but my one of my best friends in the industry is Presley Poe. She's
Love Presley. Oh my
love
God.
Presley, and she's a great friend and a great mentor, and a great all those things. There's another mentor of mine, like
Hmm.
Presley. So I don't know how it happened, bro. I honestly don't. We just hit it off. Just Presley and I, we hit it off from pretty much the first moment that we met. Can I tell that story about the first moment we met?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Tell
So
it.
we met in June of 2018. So we've been on the podcast for about 5 months. We purposefully, when we started the podcast, like we knew that we sucked, right, and we knew that we would get better, such as things. The more you do something, the better you get, right? So we knew
Yeah.
we'd get better at doing it, and so we purposefully scheduled our guest with smaller and smaller, like Instagram audiences, because that was the only
Yeah.
metric we knew at the time.
Yeah.
Until we got to, and then each episode would give us a little bit more exposure, because the idea is that we bring Presley on. She has big exposure, and she'll share it with her friends, and blah 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah, all that stuff, right? That was at least the strategy, good, bad, whatever,
Yeah.
indifferent. So we were at Premiere Orlando. We go into Premiere Orlando. I was very, very nervous, because that was kind of our opening. That was our welcoming to the industry, right? Like I remember even being on the phone with Premiere, like, we have a podcast. Well, what's a podcast? I had to explain to Premiere what a podcast was at the time, and also asking for a media pass, and I was sweating. Like they're gonna tell me no, like every insecurity, every imposter syndrome thing was there full and well, right?
Yeah.
And we were kind of introducing ourselves to the industry at that point. And so we go in, it's Saturday morning at Premiere. I'm so nervous. Like this weekend is either going to make or break us. Like I was confident. And by the way, I think I'm still right about that. Like that weekend was going to make or break us. Our very
Yeah.
first artist was by far had the biggest following of any artist that we, or any educator that we had talked. And not only that, but she's also a legend, right? And that was
Yes.
Presley. So Presley was our very first podcast that we did at our very first live event. And
Oh.
as we see, like everything can go wrong in a live event. You know what I mean? Everything can
Yes.
go wrong, recording. So I'm in the headspace. I think I was probably there 2 hours early. We had done sound check 50 times. We had done everything. We wanted to show up like the pros in the room, as you should. But like it was like crazy, So, Presley's sitting down with us, and the entire time that we're talking to Presley, I think I've told her this. If I have, this is weird, but I kept. If you've ever been close enough to Presley to kind of see her eyes, like her
Yeah.
eyes are like they're like blue, but they're almost so blue that they're white. Like there's like this
Yes.
white undertone to them, and to
Super
be
intense. Yeah.
super intense. And to be honest, I just kind of got lost in her eyes for a bit, and I kind of like staring off in her eyes. And then like I'm like, you fool, like what are you doing? Like, and then I'm asking myself like, oh my god, did she recognize? Did she know that I did that? Like her eyes are almost hypnotizing. You know what I mean? So like now, like I'm all in my head about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is like the dumbest thing ever. Like she thinks that I'm such a. And by the way, all this with that imposter syndrome. Like, do we even belong in this space?
Right. And
And
you
then
all the while trying to do the podcast,
all the
right?
while trying to do the podcast,
Yeah.
exactly. So somehow I don't know if she knew I was like lost in her eyes or not, but she we did it, right? So right after about a month, we did a lot of recordings that weekend. That was the very first one we'd ever did. Right after that podcast, Instagram Lives was a new thing. So I asked Presley again. I don't know Presley at this point. You know, she's just like this artist that everybody like loved to see on stage and stuff. You know, she's so intense in all the best ways on stage, and is such a great deliverer of information and of passion and stuff. So this is
Yes.
the this is the Presley that I knew. So I asked Presley in promotion of the podcast, can we go live and talk about the podcast? So and again, Instagram Live was brand new. Like we were trying to hit that algorithm, like
Yeah.
flow. We were trying to surf in on that thing. So Presley, I tell my wife, I'm watching TV with my wife, and I'm like, hey, I've got to go do this live thing. I'll probably be like 10 minutes, right? So a long story short, Presley and I do the live. It's about 10 or 15 minutes. You know, we just did it to promote her podcast that she'd done with us. And then we get off the live, and I'm getting ready to go hang out with my wife some more. And Presley calls me on, we just talk on the phone. And dude, we talked for like 2.5 hours on the phone. What are you guys up to? What are you doing? How can I help? What do we need to do? All that led into we should do a show together. And then
That's cool.
that's where Presley Poe and Friends originally what it was developed as. At first, I mean, I think it was supposed to be a class,
Yeah.
but then I was like, well, if we got Presley, it's got to be bigger than a class. So then
Yeah.
we designed this whole show around Presley, and again, it wasn't novel in the sense of an idea, but it was novel in the sense of a new idea for the industry. And I'd never heard and Friends used at a hair show as a hair show, like Presley Poe and Friends. Like, I give Sam Villa a hard
No,
time
it's
because,
cool.
yeah, because Sam Villa stole my
Cool.
idea. He's totally stole my idea. Sam Villa and Friends. What's worse is like he's bringing all my friends on the Sam Villa and Friends.
Yeah, wait, those are these.
No, it's all good.
Hey,
It's all good. No, it's all good because it's a great name, man.
yeah,
And marketing wise, it's exactly what we stand for. Like we just, it's just we're just all friends in the industry. So that was
yeah,
2019. It was a good experience for us. We had learned so much on there, and then unfortunately, we took I guess like a 2 year hiatus there because the world shut down. And
yeah,
then in 2021, we kicked it back up with Presley Poe and Friends. We called it back to school. It was because at that point we had the industry as a whole hadn't done much in person live education,
yeah,
and we were just kind of getting back on things. So we called it Presley Poe and Friends Back to School event, and we did that, and we because we had 2 years off and we're not event planners, we made a lot of the same mistakes that we made in 2019, but every year we're trying to like tighten things up a little bit more, a little bit more. So yeah, so here we are, 2025, and we are doing our fifth show, but it's our fourth one in a row. So Presley's Friends this year is well, first of all, I need to mention that Babelist Pro sponsored it. So all the artists that are coming in this year are Babelist Pro artists, or certainly all the educators that are going to be on stage are Babelist Pro. So we have the great, the amazing M Chen. I just love. You had M on the show, didn't you?
I did. I had her on my podcast, and I adore her.
I
She's
adore her as
amazing.
well. She is so funny,
Yeah.
so talented, so creative, and she's another one that just has this great way of passing on it knowledge and education. So
Mhm.
she's great. Her and Jacob Kahn are a perfect mix together because they're like the genders of each other. Like I find them both hilarious. I
Yes.
find them both what yes, all that. So M Chan, I selfishly, I just can't wait to hang out with her for the weekend because I'm sure we're gonna have a blast and a ball and all that good stuff. So M Chan will be
Yeah.
there. The great Joel Torres. Joel, as far as I'm concerned, does the most interesting content creation in the industry.
Hmm.
The stuff that he puts out is movie quality. It's almost it feels like he's doing like these micro 30-second movies. I
Yeah.
just he is
They're
just such
cool.
a creative when it well, an extraordinary haircutter, extraordinary hairdresser. That goes without saying, but man, his content creation is just so inspiring. Like I said, it's like
Yeah.
these micro 30-second movies. It's just amazing. I'm very envious of him. The whole
They're
process,
very cool.
very very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jeremy Stevens is coming in. Jeremy Stevens is a I guess he's an editorial or a session artist. He does a lot of finishing. And
Yeah.
then what a great pairing with Babelist, because he's going to tell us all about those great Babelist tools
Yeah.
that he uses. And then at opening our show is Los Cuts It. Los Cuts It to me, without a doubt, is one of the most creative barbers in the world.
Hmm.
That's not hyperbole at all. Like, that guy is creative,
Incredible.
and
Yeah.
incredible, and just a great guy. He's the very first person, Ruth, that's doing Presley Poe for a second year. We've never had like a return, and he's our return there. So we're
Oh,
excited to
wow.
have them. Yeah, it's cool. And then also at Presley, this sounds like a whole pitch for Presley Poe, but I just want everyone to know. Um,
No, they
uh,
need to know.
so we're also doing a VIP. So it's Olaplex's VIP. Olaplex came in and sponsored the VIP event. Literally, as we're talking, Ruth, we have 7 tickets left for the VIP. What
Oh,
is the
wow.
VIP? What do you get for the VIP? Here's what you get for the VIP, which I think is very cool. Is you're going to get tabletop conversations with all the artists. So we're going to have about an hour, and then the artists about every 15 minutes are going to jump table to table, so you can get a couple minutes with each with each one of them, and just ask the questions that you want to ask, which I think is very cool. Olaplex is definitely throwing in some extra very cool VIP only swag that you're going to have. And what we're doing as well is you're going to have front of the room seating. So you'll be the only assigned seating in the room. And then so it'll be you'll have and you're going to have the front of the room. So all the general admission people are going to come in behind you there. We're going to have
Yeah.
a special VIP seating for that. So that to me is worth it. It's very cool. Saturday night is we all get together. All the educators are going to be on stage. They're going to kind of show you what they're doing, or what's inspiring them this year, or what they're teaching, and then we're gonna have some drinks. It's almost like a party, but it's also, for me, when we first started it, like, that you go to some of these very cool parties, at like Naha, or you go to some of the cool parties at some of the hair shows. We kind of wanted to recreate that. And we wanted to bring the best educators in the country, and get to hang out with them. The educators are just going to hang out. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's a big party. The educators are going to hang out. We're not hiding them in the back room, or they're not running off to their hotel rooms. They're going to hang out for a little bit, with you. So that's Saturday night, and then Sunday, which is pretty unique, is it's an a la carte day. So you sign up and you take exactly the class that you want to take. And each artist is they're doing their own classes on Sunday, and that's April 26th and 27th. So you
Okay.
can all the information is at PresleyPoeandFriends.com. So just go to PresleyPoeandFriends.com, and that's everything, man. So that's the whole thing. One year, Ruth, we're gonna get you out there, man. We're gonna get you out there. We're
Hey,
gonna
you
hang.
never
We're gonna
know.
hang. You never
I'm
know.
I'm there. I would love to be there. Yeah.
We
So
would love to. We would love to see you there. But one day we'll get you out there. And actually, before we went on air, I was telling you how great the town is. The town is actually a character in itself, because it's an old Civil War town. It was it's like Main Street, USA. Honestly, it's
yeah,
if you go and look at Frederick, Maryland, and look at the pictures, like Christmas time pictures, like,
it looks so cute.
it is
It
so
looks
cute. Here's
really
what's
cute.
cool too,
Yeah.
is that there's no chains in town. Actually, the only chain that's in town is Starbucks, and the community didn't want Starbucks to come. As far as like the legislators didn't want Starbucks, because they wanted to keep that, like, that in town thing. But
Yeah.
they put it to a vote, and the townspeople they voted to bring Starbucks in. But that's literally the only brand that's in town. There's not even Marriott. Marriott tried like hell to get in town, and nobody would, and they wouldn't bring them in.
What?
Yeah, they wouldn't even bring in Marriott. So so now there's an independent hotel that's in town. But that's it, man. It's a cool town. We love our little town. It's pit bulls and poodles and 5-star restaurants and tattoo parlors. It's just a very cool little town. And end of
What a
April, the weather
great
should be extraordinary. As long as it doesn't rain.
yeah.
As long as it doesn't rain, we'll be good. But that's just
No,
mid
but
Atlantic for you.
hey, that's the East Coast for you.
That's the East Coast for you,
It
man.
can
But
always rain.
it can always rain. Ruth, can
Well,
I
what a
tell you about
cool
something else that I'm up
experience.
to?
Yeah, please, please.
Um, I'm gonna try to do it without crying. Every time I start talking about it, and as soon as I said
Okay.
that, I welled up a little bit. But this July, I am doing the Hair Aid event. And what Hair Aid Project really is what it is. And what Hair Aid Project is I'll be traveling to Cambodia, in July, and
Yeah.
for 6 or 7 days, I'll be helping current and former sex workers learning to cut hair. With,
Yes.
again, not to be
That's so
hyperbolic,
amazing.
but just to give their futures options.
Yeah.
So from what I hear is that there's not a lot of options for a lot of these women in Cambodia, really around the world, because Hair Aid is they're doing things all around the world. But yes, I'm going to Cambodia to do Hair Aid, and again, I'll be training people how to cut hair. And I'm pretty excited about it. Definitely nervous about it. It's the first time I've traveled by myself ever, so I might as well go to the furthest place on earth, and
Yeah.
it must be like it's 12 hours difference from my time, so it must be exactly like you're halfway around the world, right?
Right.
So,
Exactly.
so yeah, I've never been to Asia. I've never been to Cambodia, but I'm pretty doggone excited about going. I'm excited to kind of experience Hair Aid. It's cool. I encourage everybody to kind of at least go to the website. I think it's
Yeah.
hairaid.au. It's an Australian NGO. So definitely go to the
Yeah.
website, kind of see what they're doing. They're doing really, really great work, and they're always looking for volunteers. Um, so yeah, I
I've
encourage
always
them.
wanted to do that, and anybody I know said it changed them. It's just changes you
I
in a good way.
here's what's funny is I was talking to Selena. Yeah, Selena's the woman that started the foundation. She lives in Australia, obviously, and she said that we encourage people not to make any life decisions for 6 weeks after they get home.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine what would happen over there where I'd want to make life decisions, but obviously it's happened. But she said that,
Yeah.
people have wanted to sell all their earthly belongings and, they question everything. And I'm like, you know what? I think I'm in for that. But I'm not, I told Selena not to be worried about that because she doesn't know my wife. My wife isn't selling all of our earthly belongings to go move to Cambodia or something. So there's no need to do that. But again, I mean, I just encourage everybody to kind of go and check out Hair Aid and again, just doing the good work of the world. And this is my goal moving forward. Like I just want to be able to do better work for the world. There's lots of organizations like this, and I'm going to try to dip my toe into as many as I possibly can.
Amazing. Yeah. I have a dear friend who has a foundation called the Justice and Soul
Oh,
Foundation.
Matthew!
And yeah, you know Matthew?
Not only do I know Matthew, but Matthew and I have been chatting the whole time because I'm going to spend like 4 days.
He's one of my best friends.
Stop it! Here we go. We're
Yeah.
together again, Ruth. So so oh my gosh, Matthew's been amazing. Like Matthew Fairfax, Justice and Soul. Yes, you got to look them up too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matthew's been great. We've been chatting almost every day here for about a month about my trip coming up,
Oh
and
my God,
he's not
that's
going to be
so
there
amazing.
unfortunately, but he hooked me up
No.
with his friend Amber, who works over there. So Amber and I,
Yeah.
we're going to hook up when we get over there. Yeah, Matthew's been just a guiding light for this whole thing. He, yes, Matthew's been amazing, and I cannot wait to go see his salon. I can't wait to meet Amber. I can't wait to meet his staff at the hair salon. They're in Phnom Penh, which is the
Yeah.
capital city of there. So, I mean, to be vulnerable and to be completely honest with you, Ruth, is that if you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have had no interest in seeing S-21 or the Genocide Museum or the
Yeah.
killing fields. But with Matthew's encouragement, I think I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Again, part of it is that I mean it's a genocide museum. It's pretty heavy shit, and if you know
Yeah.
anything about the history of Cambodia,
Oh
it's
God.
pretty brutal. But not only is it brutal, but not that this makes it better or worse necessarily, but this all took place in 1975. So you think about a lot of the people that were, I think it was like 2 million or 2.5 million people that were murdered
Yeah.
in Cambodia. You think about like a lot of them would still be alive today, and
Yeah.
certainly their offspring are alive today, certainly, right? So
Yes.
just the impact that it had on the country, and on top of all of that, Cambodia is regularly voted like the friendliest people in the world. So
Yeah.
it's just
Matthew said he loved living there,
he
right?
loves living.
He loved
Yes,
it.
he totally does. He said the people are amazing. Everything it has been great about it. So anyways, I 2 weeks ago I wasn't going to go, but with the encouragement of Matthew, I am going to go. My concern was traveling alone. That like, what do you do with that energy?
Yeah.
When you see that.
Yeah.
So I think Amber and I are going to go have dinner or something thereafter,
Oh, perfect.
just to help process it all.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's a good idea.
but yeah, so again, I'm pretty excited about it. both Matthew and Amber have given me like, you got to eat here, you got to do this,
Uh,
all the things there, man. So I'm really looking forward to it. I haven't talked to Amber or Matthew about it, but I think I'm interested in. I think I want to do like a meditation vacation while I'm in Phnom Penh. Like I think I want to like want to
ooh,
kind of get. I think I want to like if I can like meet some monks or it's a Buddhist
yeah,
country. So if I can meet
yeah,
first
yeah,
off, I want to learn more about Buddhism. I just read a great book by Stephen Hagen called Buddhism Plain and Simple. Which if you have any interest in Buddhism at all, I highly recommend that you read the book. But I'd love to kind of like really dive into that side of it as well. About
yeah.
meditation and the yoga and stuff that's associated with Buddhism. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling on now, but I'm just looking
It's
down the road.
okay.
It's just
No, I
one.
love learning all this stuff about you. We're gonna have to do another a part two.
We can do a part 10. It's fine. Although your listeners might get bored
Good.
of hearing from me, but
I don't think so.
we'll see. Anyways, that's what I'm up to this year. I'm excited. I'm excited
You
about
just
it.
got a couple things going on.
I know. I know.
Wow.
It's a big discipline too to like be able to compartmentalize like where my brain and thought has to be. Okay, I need to be in Cambodia now. I've got to get this stuff together. Oh, I've got to be.
Yeah.
I've got to. What do we have to do for Presley Poe and Friend? What are those conversations that I need to have with Katie or Presley or whoever? Or then like, and I'm also a hairstylist behind the chair. So it's been a
Right.
real like, it's been a real maybe it's a gift of ADHD, that we can do it. But I don't kind of like to get into labels and stuff either. Just we're just doing
No,
this
I
thing.
know.
You know,
You said something about Cambodia not making any major life decisions for 6 months or whatever
6 weeks,
you've
yeah.
been back for 6 weeks. Um, I had been toying around with what do I want to do with my career and what do I want to, what do I want to do next? And then we had the election. Trevor Sorby died, and I had done my first podcast was with him, which was going to be his last podcast. So I have it and I launched it, but then I've held it back. The reason I'm saying all this is because it changed me that day. I just went, you know what? I got to do this now. I got to do what I need to do. And so I'm no longer working with Redken as an artist and have started my own thing to pass on what I learned, which is all the stuff you were talking about at the time. Trevor was a hairdresser, right? And a barber, and he cut hair with razors, and he was from Sassoon. He had all the things. So, when you have moments like that where I just like kind of just took a leap off the cliff and just said, it's time, it's time to do this. And I'm super excited that I'm doing it now, and I
Yeah.
get to um, do this podcast is new, everything is new. And I'm just excited for the next generation and what I can help them do. So I was just thinking about that when we were talking.
Yeah, no, I mean that's extraordinary. And like, it's these are the legacy things, right? These are
Hmm.
like, and not legacy in the sense of it's something to fulfill for you, but you kind of get to the point. What's that old saying? Like legacy is planting a tree you'll never see grow. you know
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at as well. Like what are we leaving the industry, what are we leaving the next generation, the whatever, and I'm a knuckleheaded kid who's not that smart, so all that I can share really is the lessons I've learned along the way. What wisdom have I picked up, and wisdom only happens through experience. Nobody can tell you what wisdom is. It has to happen through the experiences in which you had. So that to me is where I'm kind of at. I haven't quite figured out what that looks like as far as being proactive with it. But it's definitely what's next for me as well.
Yeah.
Like what can I leave and why can I leave it? And not even just necessarily in the industry, but what have my life lessons been? Because my life lessons have been, although learned through the industry, they're life lessons as well, not to be
Totally.
exclusive to just being, industry lessons.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, for me, work and personal are all mixed together anyway. So it's like life lessons and, work lessons, it all transfers back and forth to each other, right? And even being an educator and having to communicate with people makes you a better communicator, right?
Yeah.
You having a podcast for so long, so successful at it, you can talk to people, You can get people talking, that's a gift. I'm rambling now.
It's all fine though. I mean, when people listen into this, there's nothing that people like more than real, honest, authentic conversation. And that doesn't get all the other stuff in the way. I mean, that's honestly why we stopped doing questions on our podcast.
Yeah.
We just wanted to have conversation.
I like it.
I just want to chat with people, both selfishly and like I think that's where the learns are. I don't think there's any learns. I don't think there's any authentic learns in question asking or question answering. More
Okay, I'm not going to ask questions anymore.
No, you just
I
have
like
conversation.
that.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's it. I mean, we don't prepare any questions. We have two questions.
But do you let your guests know what you want to talk about at all?
No, we just go in. I mean, sometimes you know things like sometimes like what are they promoting or where do they want to go in the conversation. But normally it's again, this sounds so whatever, but it's like, how do I know Ruth? Well, that's what I want to talk about. Is how do I know her? Because that's what's interesting to me, And if she throws in some stuff that I don't know about her, oh my gosh, that's awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's kind of the guiding light for me is like, why is this person interesting and what do I know about them? And then 9 times out of 10 we find that there's other stuff that's way more interesting. But that's how we get into the conversation.
I love that.
I just want to have conversation with people, and I don't want to be a question answer kind of thing. I'm not against it by any means, but it's just not the way that my brain works. It's also why I stutter over my words and I utter and all that stuff because I assume that that's just the way I would talk if we were together as well. Maybe it's not. I don't know, but it is weird. Like it's a weird thing. And people that want to start podcasts, I tell them this all the time. It's weird once the microphone turns on. Like something else in your head clips on. Like my advice to anybody that wants to start a podcast is for 3 months before you start the podcast, is open up your phone and just do a voice memo of the day or like a journal of the day. Just record your voice because you'll find that once you turn that mic on, all of a sudden the brain shuts down. Right? You got to kind of work past that. You know what I mean? You got to work past that. It's funny. When we first started the podcast early on, we had no beginning, right? We've used the same, when Tony was on the podcast, we used the same beginning for 600 episodes. And hey, welcome to your day off. My name's Corey, and this is my best friend Tony. Like that was our opening, and that was both purposeful and accidental at the same time. The first couple of podcasts that we did, we never introduced ourselves. So I have a friend, a client friend of mine who she's a producer for Discovery Channel and National Geographic. So she was great at the beginning. She's won a couple Emmys and stuff for her work. Anyways, yada yada yada. She's a friend of mine, so she would listen to the podcast. And she'd give us great advice. And the first thing she said to me is like, nobody knows who you are. Like you've got to introduce yourself, right? And you go, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. Nobody knows who I am. So, and then on top of that, we had a really hard time. And I challenge anyone that's listening, just open the microphone on your phone and start talking. It's really, really hard. Like what's the very first thing that's going to come off? So that beginning also just greased the gear so we could talk. It gave us something that we could just, okay, now we're just in flow. It takes about 10 seconds and it puts us in flow. But that was the purpose for it, both pieces. I'm Corey, this is Tony, and here we go, away we go. But without that beginning, like it's hard. It's really hard. It's really hard for us, so anyways, that's a ramble there, Ruth.
Well,
I can ramble with you all day, buddy.
Well, we're going to do it again. We'll have to do another episode.
More rambling from the Ruth and Corey show.
It's rambling on.
Rambling on.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Right. We'll do this again. Have a great day.
Well, I'll see you in New York in a couple weeks. And are you going to be in Chicago?
That's right. I am. Yes, I'm going to see you a lot. I'm going to be in Chicago and.
All right. We're going to see a lot of each other this spring and this year. Looking forward to it.
We are.
Right, let's definitely get together. Well, I'll see you at the show. I'll see you at the Hairbrained Awards.
Hairbrained Awards coming up. Woo-hoo.
Woo-hoo. March 23rd, New York City. We'll see you there.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Ruth.